Hello, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. To the elite members, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you more than I can put into words. If you are new to the channel and begin to like what you are hearing, please leave a like, comment, or hype on the video. And if you'd like to become part of the family, please hit that subscribe button and make sure your notification bell is set to on. That way you'll be reminded of every time I upload a video. With all of that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Let's Not Meet Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. A few years ago, I was a university student renting a house with 3 friends on a quiet street in what's considered one of the safer, more privileged cities in the UK. I'd never heard of anything strange happening in the area. To help pay for tuition and rent, which was expensive, I worked late evening shifts at an ASDA that closed at midnight. My shift usually ended at around 12:30 or 1 a.m., so I'd often cycle home at odd hours. But nothing ever happened. Not until one night. My housemates, who I'd met through uni, were a year ahead of me. They had already graduated and were busy with work. By the time I got home, they were usually asleep, so the house was always quiet when I returned. One winter night, after a long shift, I was cycling home in the freezing cold. I was exhausted and moving slowly, which probably made me pretty quiet on the road. As I turned onto the street where our house was, at the far end, I noticed someone standing directly in front of our door. This guy was bald, and none of the people I lived with were. He was just standing there, completely still, facing the door. He wasn't knocking, wasn't moving, wasn't talking, just staring straight ahead. Our door didn't have any glass panels or a peephole. Nothing you could see through, so there was no reason for him to be that close unless he was waiting for someone. I slowed down and instinctively turned around before he could notice me. Something about it felt off. I circled a few nearby streets, trying to think of what to do. I was too scared to go back, so I started calling my housemates, but no one answered. I texted a few friends too, hoping someone might still be awake. But nothing. I could see my breath in the cold, and my fingers were freezing around the handle of my bike. I kept cycling through better lit areas where there were still the occasional cars driving by. Being near movement felt safer. Eventually, I calmed down a bit, but I was drained. I'd worked 12 hours, and it was nearly 3 a.m. My phone battery was low, and I just wanted to go home. So I cycled back and turned onto my street again. He was still there. Same position, still staring at the door. I turned around immediately and went back to the main road. By now, it was even quieter. That's when I had a full-blown panic attack. I didn't know what to do anymore. For some reason, don't ask me why, I never called the police. I really don't know why. I think I just froze. Eventually, one of the friends I'd messaged earlier replied. They were still awake, and I asked if I could come over. Thankfully, they said yes. It took a while to get there, but I finally made it by 4 a.m. I was beyond tired, but safe. I guess he eventually left because the next morning, none of my housemates had noticed anything unusual. To the bald guy staring at my door in the middle of the night, let's not meet again. This happened today, and I just can't get it off my head. That's why I decided to share it with you. By the way, please excuse any mistakes. English is not my first language. I'm currently visiting my grandma. She lives in a small town with just a couple hundred people in it. I do small hikes daily here. We used to go together, but because of the sunny weather day, she decided to stay home. Everything was going as usual, and I decided to take a short hike along a little path through the woods that my grandma had recommended to me. I also like to use these quiet moments alone to smoke a little. You know what? While enjoying the landscape. So I did. After about an hour and a half of walking, something happened. I saw a man about 60 meters away, walking in my direction. Keep note, this is not a very popular hiking trail, so it's actually quite rare to see somebody else, especially in this kind of weather. Everything still seemed normal at this point. As he came closer, I noticed him really staring at me. I awkwardly broke and re-entered eye contact several times. The closer he got, the more tense I felt. I should mention that I'm a man and can definitely defend myself. I've met a few other people on this path before, and everything always felt completely normal. But this man, was different. As I walked past him, I noticed a strange grin on his face. He had really bad teeth and was quite tall. The way he walked was unsettling, unnatural somehow. It felt awkward, and I decided to break the silence by saying, "Hello." He didn't answer right away, but I could hear a very quiet mumbling as he passed me. I don't really know how to describe it, but something about him was just off. I could feel it in my gut. After we were about 10 meters apart, I could still feel his eyes on me. I turned around and caught him staring at me. He wasn't even walking anymore, just standing there. When he realized I'd noticed, he quickly turned away as if trying to pretend he hadn't been watching. Now, remember, I had smoked about 20 minutes earlier, so all of this really freaked me out. I tried to tell myself it was just paranoia from the weed. About 20 minutes later, I realized I had taken a wrong turn and was walking into a dead end. That meant I'd have to turn around and go back, the exact same way that strange man had gone. I decided to pull myself together and distract myself with some music as I headed back. But I just couldn't get that encounter, or the fact that I'd have to walk in his direction again, out of my head. I kept walking for about 40 minutes. At that point, I thought the chances of meeting him again were slim, and I tried to focus on getting home. I was starting to feel very tired from the constant sun. Still, I couldn't shake one thought that crept in. No one would ever find me out here. That realization terrified me. I was making good progress when I saw someone sitting on a small bench right next to the path. It was him. I swear, I felt like I was in a horror movie. My thoughts raced. Did he wait for me? Did he know about the dead end and that I have to come back this way? Panic set in, and I tried to keep my cool. The bench was positioned so that he couldn't see me yet, but he'd have a perfect view of my back once I walked past him. As I got closer, my heart began pounding like it hadn't in years. The kind of heartbeat you get when you cross the finish line after a marathon. I was freaking out. When he finally noticed me, he turned his head slowly and looked at me over his shoulder. That same grin was back. The same twisted smile. I felt chills crawl all over my skin. I kept walking at a normal pace, not daring to look away for more than a second. But he kept staring. His eyes followed me, locked on me in a way that felt wrong, inhuman. I had this horrible feeling that he might suddenly get up and chase me. After a few seconds that felt like hours, I couldn't take it anymore. I started walking faster, then jogging, then sprinting. I ran as hard as I could until I couldn't see him anymore. When I finally made it home, I couldn't get the image of his face out of my mind. The grin, the way he stood there, the way he waited. Please don't write this off as misjudgment or paranoia because I smoked earlier. This was real. There was something not right about him. I could feel it. I've never felt that way about anyone I've ever met. This is a true story, and I won't forget that encounter anytime soon. Somehow, I can't shake the thought that maybe I was really lucky that day. So, to the strange man I encountered with that creepy smile, I hope I never run into you again. When I was 18, I was dating my girlfriend at the time, who had really strict parents. Because of that, I often traveled to her place every weekend so we could spend time together. Her house was about 30 to 50 minutes away by public transportation. Since I lived in the city, subway delays were a normal occurrence. This one particular day was no different. I went to her place, we hung out, and when it was time for me to head home, I realized I was already running late. My own parents were also strict. They didn't let me stay out past a certain hour, so I had to rush back. When I got to the train station, I realized I'd forgotten my Metro card. In my hurry, I decided to hop the turnstile. The moment I did, I locked eyes with a stranger standing on the other side of the gate. The man looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He had a darker complexion, messy grayish hair, and was wearing a beaten white tank top. It looked like I'd caught his attention mid-yell because he stopped shouting and just stared at me. I didn't think much of it at first. I had my headphones on and usually kept to myself, so I continued walking further down the platform. But after a few steps, I noticed something unsettling. The man was following me. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, so I kept walking until I stopped beside a pillar. When I did, the man stopped too. He started pacing back and forth behind me, muttering to himself. That's when it hit me. I was being followed by someone who clearly wasn't well. The platform was almost empty, maybe 2 to 4 other people, and I was isolated from them. I was standing fairly close to the edge of the platform, trying to decide what to do. The trains were delayed, and if I kept walking, I'd hit a dead end. I decided to FaceTime my brother after texting him about the situation. I held my phone in front of me so he could see what was happening behind me, while he described it to me through my earbuds. According to him, the man was staring directly at me, pacing erratically, and growing more aggressive by the second. I was shaking. Despite living in the city, I never experienced anything like this. Maybe the occasional encounter with someone unstable, but nothing this threatening. I tried walking faster down the platform while still on FaceTime, but the man kept following me. Eventually, I stopped again behind another pillar. I was frantically checking the train times, praying it would arrive soon so I could get out of there. The man kept yelling, and every second felt like an eternity. After about 10 more minutes, the train finally pulled into the station. Slowly. Painfully slowly. As it came to a stop, the man suddenly turned and walked away. I moved even further down the platform to make sure I didn't end up in the same car as him. At the time, I was annoyed at how slow the train had been moving, but looking back, that delay probably saved me. Later, my brother told me that the man had been waiting for the train to get close enough so he could push me onto the tracks. He gave up only when he realized how slowly it was approaching. I honestly believe he wanted to rob me, or worse. So, to the man who tried to push me onto the tracks, let's never meet again. For some context, I have severe bipolar disorder and was in psychosis for a good majority of this story. Zach says I met him at the psych ward last year, but I don't remember meeting him there. I was in and out of the psych ward for about 6 months last year due to my bipolar 1 disorder. My mom also said she doesn't remember him being in the hospital while I was there, but she never visited reliably because she has a drinking problem. More on that later. I remember meeting Zach on the bus. I don't currently drive because of an accident I was in quite a while ago, so I rely on public transportation. In March of 2024, I was on my way to the dispensary. As I approached the door, I heard someone say, 3R, which is the name of the psych ward at the local hospital. I turned around and noticed a short, portly man. That detail is important for context. I am a woman. We got to talking because I was still in psychosis and vulnerable. He said he was going to the dispensary too and told me he'd been in the psych ward with me. We talked while waiting for the bus back, and again while riding it. He told me he was a year older than me, gay, and living on disability while doing a fundraising job. At the time, I was living with my alcoholic mother, who often made my condition worse and fueled my repeated hospitalizations. I was desperate for a friend. It turned out he lived across the street from me. At first, he seemed pretty normal, but then I ended up in the hospital again. Zach started incessantly calling the hospital, which scared me and worsened my psychosis. When I didn't return his calls, he suddenly showed up as a patient, which really frightened me. That made me realize he may have actually met me in the hospital like he claimed. The hospital separated us for that stay. I think they were also concerned about his behavior. After about a month of knowing him, he admitted that he had recently gotten out of prison for kidnapping and was on parole. He said he had Asperger's and that the kidnapping was a misunderstanding. I have criminal charges too. Nothing like that. And in my altered mental state, I looked past it. My mental health team also told me it was possible his autism had led to misunderstandings. I eventually moved in with him because things at my mom's house got unbearable. But Zach started to get jealous of my old roommate, who had been helping me financially. Around that time, I began to come back to my senses and realized this man was not normal and might actually be dangerous. He tried to get me to sleep in his room, and if I tried to sleep in my own designated room, he would pace all night. He also got me a phone, and things came to a head when I told him I wanted to eventually get one in my own name. He flipped out, so I moved back in with my mom. When I left, he accused me of stealing his medication. That should have been the end of it, but in December, I felt lonely and wondered if maybe I had judged him too harshly because of his disability. I'm not from the city I live in and don't have many friends here. I reached out to Zach again. He was homeless at that point. I had already moved into my own place and stupidly invited him over. No one in my personal life wanted me to be friends with Zach. Not my mom, though she would get drunk and talk to him whenever I stopped speaking to him because she knew it upset me. Not my ex, and not my old roommate. I was torn because my mental health team met him. He ended up assigned to the same ACT team, and they said his autism was pretty severe and accounted for most of his odd behavior. Zach eventually got a car and started giving me rides to work. He was living in his car because he couldn't find housing due to his charges. One night, while he was over, he fell on me and mumbled something like, "I'm not going to rape you." He was very, very heavy, but I managed to get him off me. He was on substances and it was winter, so I looked past it, partly because I needed a friend and partly because I didn't want to walk to bus stops in heavy snow. After that incident, I began to wonder if he was smart enough to manipulate me into thinking he was harmless, when he wasn't. He once joked, "What if you get raped?" He constantly guilt-tripped me about having other friends. He stole $60 from my mom, started hanging around outside my old roommate's house and my mom's new house, and stopped getting help from the ACT team. An old phone of mine also went missing after he helped me clean. I decided to stop being friends with Zach once and for all in April. He began driving by where I lived and honking his horn. He would text me repeatedly. My building is locked, has a security officer, and is covered by cameras. The staff told me they had seen Zach parking around the building. I contacted his parole officer and mine, and I told Zach he was being recorded every time he came near my place. The harassment has stopped for now, but he gets off parole in September. He's still living in his car, reportedly has a girlfriend now, and is still using drugs according to a mutual acquaintance. Sometimes I still wonder if I really did meet Zach in the psych ward, or if he had been following me all along. I'm relieved he isn't bothering me anymore. The ACT team told me they don't think he's an immediate threat, and that it wasn't worth pressing harassment charges unless he does something again, especially since I've already spoken to both of our POs. I know a lot of this situation was on my own fault, because I made naive decisions and looked past his behavior due to his health conditions. As I said, I have conditions too. Please refrain from telling me what I could have done differently. I wasn't in my right state of mind for much of this. He also told me that when he was 13, he propositioned his younger cousin for sexual favors in exchange for video games, and that he was sent to juvenile detention for it. His record was later sealed. His mom's family won't talk to him because he once tried to kiss his brother at a wedding. Zach, let's never meet again. I haven't shared this story with many people. I worked at a gas station for just over 3 years some time ago. At the time of this story, I would have been no older than 18. I lived in a heavily suburban area in the deep south that wasn't known for anything too insane, so most businesses didn't take many safety precautions beyond what our basic training covered. Things like, don't fight a robber, give them what they want, etc. My manager, Sophia, never scheduled women for overnight shifts. It was always our male staff. However, one night, I offered to stay later for the extra bit of money, and since I lived only a 5-minute walk away, I didn't see any harm in staying late. One thing I feel I need to mention is that it gets incredibly dark in the south at night, and the sun sets fast. My area also had little to no streetlights, which only made the nights feel darker. So my shift starts as normal. I manned the register, swept, restocked what I could, and kept things tidy for the most part. But a girl can only mop so many times before there's nothing left to do. So I spent a lot of my time at the register, waiting for customers and scrolling through my phone to pass the time. When a customer finally came in, I called out my standard greeting and looked up to find a tall, disheveled man standing at the counter. I immediately put my phone away to help him, but I noticed he was acting off. At the time, I chalked it up to my imagination, but my gut told me otherwise. He asked where the restroom was, and I pointed him in the direction. To get to the bathroom, you have to walk past the registers and down a small hallway where our office and stockroom are located. He went that way, and I carried on as normal, completely forgetting about him. A regular of mine walked in a few minutes later, a taller man who had served in the Marines for 22 years, and we started talking. In the middle of our conversation, I heard something fall over in the back, like a broom or a mop. My regular asked if I was working alone and offered to take a look around. I declined, not wanting to get in trouble with my boss for letting a customer into employee-only areas. He said his goodbyes and told me he'd be back later for lottery tickets. Some time passed and I eventually had to pee after drinking what felt like a gallon of Powerade from the soda machine. I made my way toward the restroom, but before I reached it, I noticed the office door was more open than I'd left it. I don't know what compelled me to push the door open with my foot, but that's exactly what I did. I kicked it so it would swing wide and trigger the motion sensor light inside. The light flicked on, and I didn't see anything at first. Then, I spotted the odd bathroom guy standing stock still behind the door. We made eye contact. I immediately backed out of the hallway. The man emerged from the office just seconds later and casually strolled out, keeping his eyes on me the entire time until he disappeared from view. I called my boss right away, and she contacted the police. Apparently, that man had been banned from every single other store in the area for doing the exact same thing. But he'd never faced charges because, technically, he hadn't committed a crime yet. He continued to show up every day at random hours, just to stare at me over the aisles, never buying anything. I still don't know what his intentions were or why he hid, but something about the way he stood so still, long enough for the motion light to turn off, has never set right with me. Creepy guy from the gas station. Let's never meet again. I'm not sure if this is linked to previous events, but someone who I presume was living in my old apartment complex was hacking my speakers and other devices, playing disturbing songs through them at random times. Creepy songs that they blast at full volume, all hours of the day and night. I know it doesn't sound that scary, but it was to me. After months of torment, that situation eventually stopped, and I moved out of that apartment shortly thereafter. I never found out who it was. I don't know if what's happening now is connected, but it's strange, and I'm scared. I moved into a new apartment townhouse about 6 months ago. It's a nice place in a nice suburb that's meant to be very safe. Everything was normal, and I was thriving, until around 2 months ago. At first, I thought I was just being silly or going crazy. There were little things, like my front door being left unlocked overnight, even though I remembered locking it before bed. Or I'd come home from work to find the bathroom light on, even though I always turn everything off before leaving. At first, I thought I was just stressed and forgetful, but then I noticed things that couldn't possibly be in my head. I always leave my keys on the side table beside the door every night after locking up. But one morning I woke up and found them on the floor by the back door. Another time I found my bedroom window slightly open. I have a cat who's very adventurous, so I never open that window, or any window for that matter. At this point, I start to really freak out. I'm a young woman, I live alone, and I've always had creepy things happen to me. It sent me into a spiral. I keep my blinds down all the time. but my bedroom faces a narrow alley where you can hear everything. People walking, talking, coughing. Lately, it's been feeling more deliberate. I know I sound crazy, but I'm seriously freaked out. One night last week, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tapping on my window. I froze. I couldn't move, trying not to scream or make myself known. After a bit, it stopped, and everything went completely silent. But I couldn't fall back to sleep. I tried telling myself it was in my head or maybe a tree branch. But the next morning, I found 2 smeared fingerprints on my bedroom window from the outside. At that point, I told my landlord and asked if he could put up cameras at the front of the house. He brushed it off, saying it was probably just some kids from down the road. It wasn't. And even if it was, how does that make a fucking difference? So I installed a Ring camera at my front door 3 days ago. Since then, I've had 3 alerts of motion detected between 2 and 4 a.m. Every time, the footage shows nothing, just an empty alleyway. But I can't shake the feeling that someone is standing just out of frame. Then, 2 days ago, my bedroom light was on when I came home from work. I haven't used any of the same devices I had during the speaker hacking thing a few years back. I changed my number, moved apartments, made new accounts, everything. But now this is happening again, and I can't shake the feeling that somehow the person found me. Or maybe this is someone entirely new. Either way, I don't feel safe anymore. I'm jumpy all the time, sleeping with a light on, checking every lock multiple times at night. Part of me is terrified that whoever it is just waiting for me to break psychologically. And now, I have no clue what to do, because I went to the police yesterday and they weren't helpful at all. They said that they can't do anything unless I have proof. Honestly, I don't even know what that would look like right now. But I know something's not right. Please, if anyone can give me any advice on what to do, I can't afford to move, and I'm genuinely losing my mind. So to the person who's following me or messing with me when I'm home or not at home, let's not meet. I live in Dublin, Ireland, in one of the many assisted living accommodations. There's a reception area, staff during the day, and security guards at night. I've always felt very happy and safe living here. I even feel comfortable enough to sleep with my window open a crack when it gets too warm in the summer. Until last Friday, I believed that once I was behind our locked gates, I was completely safe. That belief changed dramatically. Another thing you should know about me is that I absolutely love attending concerts and shows at various venues around Dublin. Since I can't see, the view doesn't matter to me, so I always get the cheapest tickets and go quite often. So, last Friday, yes, on the 4th of July, I was returning home from one such concert at around after 10 p.m. The taxi pulled up to the locked main gate, and I buzzed the intercom to ask the security guard to let me in through the side gate. I have a key, but the lock is stiff and fiddly. The key tends to get stuck or won't turn properly. The security guard didn't answer after 2 rings, which meant he was probably out on one of his hourly patrols around the property. The taxi driver offered to help by opening the side gate for me, relocking it, and then passing the key back through the gate. That's exactly what we did. Once I was halfway through the courtyard, the guard came up, apologizing for not being there. He had indeed been on patrol. I told him it was fine, and he helped me the rest of the way through the courtyard so I could avoid parked cars. Then he led me into our building, straight ahead through the reception area, and turned right toward the double doors leading to the corridor that goes directly to my apartment. Usually he walks me to the double doors, opens them, and then lets me go the rest of the way on my own. It's a straight walk with no obstacles, and besides, I've always felt safe there, behind locked gates, surrounded by cameras. Nothing bad could happen, right? Wrong. I found and opened my apartment door, stepped inside, and went to close and lock it as I always do immediately after entering. But this time the door felt strangely stiff. My first thought was, I'll have to put in a maintenance request tomorrow. Something's wrong with this door. I was determined to close it and lock it, but the more I tried, the more resistance I felt. Then I realized, with horror, that someone was on the other side of the door trying to stop me from closing it. Panic set in. My mind jumped to the worst possibility, that whoever it was might force their way in and assault me. I threw my whole body against the door, pushing with all the strength I had, but the intruder pushed back just as hard. In absolute terror, I shouted, "What is it?" As soon as I yelled, I heard and felt the door suddenly slam shut. The instant it did, I turned the lock. Then, I just leaned against the door, trying to process what had just happened. Did somebody really try to get into my apartment just now? How come I didn't hear them walking behind me? Should I report this to security? But what if it was the security guard himself? What if he tampers with the footage? Are there even more cameras in my corridor? And if not, would anyone even believe me? I went to bed without reporting it. But the more I thought about the incident on Saturday, the more freaked I became. That afternoon, I sent my key worker a long WhatsApp voice message, everything that had happened the night before. I knew she wouldn't get it until Monday, but at least I'd officially reported it. I attended another concert on Sunday, and thankfully, nothing happened that night. I was able to open and close my front door with no problem. Unfortunately, my key worker couldn't access her work phone on Monday, but she finally got my message yesterday. She told me she'd contact me in an hour after speaking with the building manager. When she called back, she requested a meeting between herself, the building manager, and me. What the manager told me made me shudder. Apparently, the security footage showed the guard walking in the opposite direction from where I'd entered to finish his patrol, but someone had been following me down the corridor. You couldn't see the struggle at my door, but you could see the person running away afterward. Because of GDPR, the staff couldn't tell me yet who the person was, but they'd contacted the police, who were on their way to take my statement. I was also told that the person was likely just looking for money and didn't seem to have sexual motives. Still, I want to press charges. I don't want something like this to happen again to me or anyone else living here. They offered to have a security guard escort me right to my door every time I come home from a concert or show and make sure I get inside safely. I gladly accepted. So, to the person who tried to force their way into my apartment, unfortunately, we'll probably meet again, but I hope you're in handcuffs when we do. Oh, bit of an update here. It's anticlimactic, but hear me out. The police have been. They were very understanding and sympathetic. They interviewed me and reviewed the footage. It turns out my would-be robber is a minor. I was told I could still press charges, but since he's underage, he wouldn't be prosecuted. He would only receive a stern warning. I decided not to press charges since there wouldn't be any real consequence, and I don't know what his parents or guardians are like. What if they try to intimidate me? I just hope the police manage to put the fear of God into that kid so he thinks twice before trying something like that ever again. Fair warning before I get into this. I'm not the greatest writer, but I'll try my best for this one, so here we go. This happened a few days ago when I'm writing this. Where I live, we have a lot of parks, and as two teenage girls going to hang out with guys, my friend and I obviously picked the biggest one, where there's more to do and fewer people around. For some context, this park is down the street from a few halfway houses and work release centers for recently released inmates. A lot of the time, the ones who get day passes and have nowhere else to go end up at this park just to have some time away. So, more often than not, when my friends and I go to hang out, or do things teenagers probably shouldn't, there are already a few tweakers and sketchy people there that we have to watch out for. That day in particular, the guys we were with were boring us more than usual, so we were sitting on the sidewalk talking and half listening to them when a girl walked up to us. While I'm not naive or stupid, especially in this park, and especially where I live, I'm still a girl, and I won't turn away from another young girl who's crying, upset, and missing her shoes and phone. The girl, I'll avoid saying her name along with a lot of others in the story, asked if she could use my phone to make a call. Of course, I had the thought that she might run off with it, but again, I'd rather help someone who actually needs it than to ignore them. So I offered her my phone. She held it for a few minutes before starting to cry again, saying she couldn't remember anyone's number. I told her it was okay, and she began to break down. She told us she couldn't remember what happened to her last night. She said she'd been with a man, out for drinks, just having fun, until suddenly, he got very angry. She couldn't remember anything after that, just waking up in a parking lot and being taken to a local hospital. She said she was treated for a head injury and had bruises all over her body. The hospital refused to give her a sexual assault kit, and then they dropped her off at the park because she couldn't remember where she lived. She kept apologizing, saying she didn't mean to ruin our day, but at this point, my friend and I didn't care about the guys anymore. We just wanted to get this girl some help. I offered to call 911, but she said the police wouldn't care because she was a woman of color, and I could understand that, being one myself. We got our blankets, food, and whatever she needed, and promised we'd take her to the hospital instead of calling an ambulance, mostly because she clearly didn't want to deal with the police or get into another ambulance. We told her we'd stay with her the whole time, but she didn't like the idea. I could tell she was getting agitated and aggressive towards us. That was the first red flag. When my friend left to get her car from across the park, the girl told me she was scared they would put her back into the psych ward. I didn't know the full story, and I couldn't promise they wouldn't. I could only promise we'd go with her and stay as long as they'd let us. But she kept crying and asking us to take her to a nearby store. Not wanting to upset her more or make things worse, we agreed. The store was only a few miles from the park, so it was no big deal. But the whole ride there, she kept digging through her bag, and that's when I first started feeling uneasy. She didn't take her hand out of the bag the entire 7-minute ride, and she kept staring at me, mumbling to herself. I tried not to judge. She'd gone through a traumatic experience after all. But the unease stuck with me. When we arrived at the store, she told us to take her to the back, where 2 men were waiting. She jumped out of the car and ran toward them, crying and breaking down. But the man she went to stood completely still. He didn't comfort her or show any empathy at all, which struck me as very strange. We got out of the car to explain what was going on, but I've never seen someone care so little about a person they apparently knew. The man gripped her wrists tightly, not even looking at her. That was another red flag. At this point, I knew something wasn't right. This man was not going to help her. My friend explained the situation, but the man said they'd take care of it and ask if we wanted to come along. While we had said we'd stayed with her, I didn't see the point anymore, and I definitely didn't want to go anywhere with this man. My friend must have sensed it too, because she offered to follow in our car if he wanted someone to explain things at the hospital. But the man insisted we all take his car, which was small and couldn't fit all of us anyway. He gave the girl a look, and she walked back towards us, saying we'd promised to stay with her. But she wasn't crying anymore, just making this weird face. When we kept saying we'd follow her in our car, she suddenly grabbed my friend's arm and started yelling at her, becoming aggressive. She wouldn't let go. I tried to pry her hand off my friend, who was clearly freaking out, while the girls screamed in her face. The man started accusing us of being part of it, saying we must have hurt her and were now just trying to bring her back. He said we needed to go with him. Then he grabbed my arm and started pulling me towards his car, quietly, trying not to make a scene. I was scared, but I'm not the type to freeze under pressure, so I started pulling back. Still, he was much stronger than me, and I know he could easily get me into that car. Before he could, though, my friend screamed, the kind of scream only a terrified teenage girl can make, the kind that gets people to look. The man dropped my arm, shoved me away, and dragged the girl toward his car. He forced her inside and drove off, leaving us standing in the parking lot, shaking. We got into our car, panicking, unsure of what to do. Stupidly, I was still worried about the girl. I don't think it had fully sunk in that she'd been trying to lure us into the car with that man. We called 911 and explained everything from the beginning. The police said they'd get back with us with information. Over the next few days, we got a few follow-up calls. What we learned was disturbing. The woman we tried to help had been at the hospital the night before, but not for what she said. She'd been brought in for drug abuse and ongoing mental health issues, something apparently common for her. The man in the parking lot, however, wasn't her boyfriend or family member. They still don't know who he was, only that he's been charged with aggravated kidnapping multiple times. So, to the crying girl in the park and the man in the parking lot, let's never meet again. For context, I'm a 29-year-old male to female who presents as masculine for work-related things like rideshare. Basically, this means I don't generally get tilted by people calling me he, him because, well, I don't pass. Anyway, I use both apps, Uber and Lyft, and your girl usually doesn't have any problems. The riders are generally pretty nice or quiet, and honestly, I enjoy giving rides. Not a lot of money, but enough in between paychecks at my big girl job to be enjoyable to do when I can. However, as I was cruising off from a ride, I got a new request for about $20 to $30. Not uncommon, but sometimes that means it's far as hell. This one was only 45 minutes, so not too bad. Plus, money. I drive to the pickup pen, which is in between a decently fancy Japanese grill and a kinda rundown dispensary. I park out of the way of traffic and hit arrived. 2 minutes? Nobody. 3 minutes? Somebody finally walks up. She gets to my door, and here's where the scary shit starts. She doesn't immediately open the door. She reaches for the handle, sure, but then proceeds to lean completely forward against my rear passenger door and laugh. She's laughing into the paint. Then she bends all the way backward to the point her legs are almost at a 45-degree angle with her torso. She opens the door, and apparently my last rider left something in the back seat. The woman stops laughing and starts snickering. I hit her with a, "Hi, are you?" Writer's name here, in my forced masculine voice. In a creepily cutesy voice, she says, "Yeah, that be me. Someone done dropped a thing in your back seat, Mr. Uberman." I noticed the item and asked to keep it in the front seat with me so I can return it later. "Oh, damn. Guess she must have left it on accident," she says, then stares. Not at me, but at the rearview mirror. "Ain't you gonna call her?" I tell her I'll do it when a request comes through and to return it, like I usually do. Now, quick aside to explain the characterization of this woman so far. I'm not going out of my way to be prejudiced. She legitimately spoke this way. And beyond just a country vernacular, she spoke as if she couldn't read well. As someone who's worked with people with traumatic mental disorders or who are severely mentally disturbed or neurodivergent as a volunteer, I try my best not to be annoyed or a bitch in these situations. Anyway, we head off toward her destination pin, 45 minutes away. First red flag, because the others could just be a weird or drunk rider. She asked me to stop at a UPS store on our way to her destination. No biggie, right? Here's the issue. She doesn't specify where, just the UPS. As I open my Google Maps to find the nearest one, she says, "Oh, you don't have to, but I have to get my friend out of jail. If I don't get this package, he gonna be there overnight, "Oh," I say, not getting what the package had to do with jail, but playing along. "Well, it's just he gonna be in there all night if we don't get him out. He gonna kill somebody. He in jail for killing. Okay, what the fuck?" When I freak out visibly but not audibly, she smiles and says, "Oh, we don't have to go there. Let's keep going back on the road. I know you Uber guys gotta make your money. Yeah, Uber drivers don't get a lot of money, do they?" Weird pivot, but we keep going. I nervous laugh and say, "Yeah, but I don't mind if you need to stop." Wrong move. She continues to stare at me through the rearview mirror every time I glance back. We're on the highway before she says anything again. "I likes this car. What car this be?" I tell her. "Ooh, it's nice. You like it? You like this car?" I nod. "Oh, yep, it's a nice car." Then she turns to the empty seat next to her and starts arguing with the air. "No, it's his car. No, I don't think he wants to do that. Stop it." "Everything okay?" I ask. "Oh, my friend just say this car is nice." Oh? I'm a bit freaked out, but whatever. People are weird, and it's not unusual for a grown woman to have imaginary friends. Then she says, "Mr. Uberman, do you think it's okay to steal if you have to?" I shrug. I mean, what do you mean? Like if I was in a local grocery store and wanted bread, I should be able to take it, right? Especially if I work there. I shrug again. I ain't no thief. It's 'cause I needs it. She yells suddenly, not at me, but at my trunk. "I got money, right, Mr. Uberman? I got a job, so I got money." She's getting visually more agitated. Then she turns to the trunk and says, "What? No, you tell her to simmer down now. He a nice man." She goes on this long rant about how she's not a vagabond and she's got a job, so she's not poor. She keeps switching between talking to the seat next to her and the trunk. Eventually, she smirks, and it's off-putting because she's missing teeth. Now, do I necessarily care if someone's talking to themselves in a Lyft ride? No. I don't judge people. Life is hard. But when her imaginary friends start to sound like they want me to die, yes, I do mind. I don't like being alive, but I'm not about to let someone else decide that. I keep driving, staying quiet. She smirks in the rear view and says in a scarily soft voice, "Aren't you sleepy? Are you hungry, honey? They say you're real sleepy. Do you like boba?" I'm now gripping the steering wheel and avoiding all eye contact. "Oh, no, I'm okay. Thanks for the offer, though." "I'll pay if we stop," she says in her sing-song voice from earlier. "Let's stop. Maybe you could even pull over and nap for a bit." She is baring her teeth at this point, and I'm internally screaming that I want this ride over ASAP. But $20 is $20, so we keep driving. "Well, you killed her. So it is what it is," she suddenly says to the trunk. So, new intel. She's talking to dead people. Holy spaceballs. I'm now even more determined not to stop. We get to a stop sign and she leans forward. Forgot to mention all of this is happening while she's sitting directly behind me. She stretched forwards and sticks out one bony finger poking my shoulder. "How does your body feel, Mr. Uberman? Huh? You sure you don't want something to eat? I could feed you if you just pull over somewhere." That's about the 10th time she's tried to get me to stop. Then she says, "He's sleepy, ain't he? He gonna kill someone if he don't get some sleep. Someone gonna die. He got two choices. He choose." I ask, "Who's going to kill someone?" She looks suddenly aware and angry. "Nothing. No one." Eventually, after being death stared at for 45 minutes and listening to her imaginary ghost friends talk about robbing or killing me, we finally reach her destination. She gets out and says, "Oh, thank you for being so patient. Make sure you don't forget to eat." She says it with deliberate pauses. Then she comes around to my window and presses her smile against the glass. I drove straight home and didn't drive for Lyft for a week. So to the lady who kept trying to get me to pull over to sleep with her in the car, let's not ever meet again. This may be a milder let's not meet story compared to some others, but I can assure you it was absolutely terrifying for me at the time. Even to this day, I'm 100% convinced that the man in this story is a potential predator or stalker, or at very least, possesses similar tendencies. Back in 2014, I went on a first date with a guy I'd matched with on Tinder. I lived in D.C. at the time and worked on Capitol Hill for a U.S. congressman. I was about 28 or 29 then. While he was nice, handsome, and a self-declared Southern gentleman, Tinder guy was extremely pushy leading up to our date. My job was insanely busy, often requiring all-nighters and leaving me with exactly zero social life to speak of. Looking back now, it's painfully obvious that I didn't have the time or space in my life for dating back then. But after months of my best friend begging me to let her create a Tinder profile for me, I finally caved. For weeks, I kept trying to reschedule the date due to work, but Tinder guy would not take no for an answer. He was extremely manipulative and clearly gifted at it, guilt-tripping me until I finally agreed to meet him for dinner. So I went. The date went fine on paper and probably looked normal to anyone watching, but something about him gave me the ick. At the time, I couldn't quite explain why. He was polite, attractive, had a great job, but the way he stared at me, unblinking and intense, made my skin crawl. It was like he was playing a creepy staring contest where he was the only participant. There were plenty of other red flags, but the first major one came at the end of dinner. After thanking him politely for the meal, and knowing full well there would not be a second date, I told him I had an early, busy day ahead and needed to go home. Instead, Tinder Guy pressured me into going to a bar next door for a nightcap. Looking back now, and thanks to therapy, I understand how manipulation can be weaponized. Tinder Guy was a master of it, and I had no chance. After 2 drinks I didn't even want, I tried again to leave, this time more firmly. He acted like he didn't hear me, got up and came back from the bar with 2 more beers. At that point, I was getting really pissed. So I faked an incoming call from my boss, channeling my inner Meryl Streep, and gave the acting performance of a lifetime. And, not to pat myself on the back, but it actually worked. The good news: he finally believed my Oscar-worthy performance and agreed to let me go. The bad news: he insisted on sharing an Uber home, even though we lived in completely different neighborhoods. I absolutely did not want him to know where I lived, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. Against my better judgment, I caved and agreed, silently cursing myself the entire ride. When we got near my neighborhood, I had the driver drop me off a few blocks away from my actual address. As I tried to get out of the car as quickly as possible, Tinder Guy followed me, grabbed my shoulder, spun me around, and aggressively kissed me, like manhandling my face, tongue and all. It was disgusting. When he finally let go, I was holding back vomit. After several minutes of placating him, I convinced him that the night was over and pretended that the house we were standing in front of was mine. He reluctantly got back into his Uber and left. As soon as he was out of sight, I sprinted home, locked the door, deadbolted it, and sank to the floor in disbelief. Once I calmed down, I felt mostly relieved to be safe and to have survived what had turned into an unsettling nightmare of a date. I even joked to my roommates, "Well, can't wait to never talk to that dude again." But alas, 2014 made me a naive fool. Immediately after the date, Tinder Guy sent me a barrage of texts, fawning over me, complimenting me, and repeatedly asking, "Can we FaceTime? Can we video chat?" This was literally 1 hour after I'd gotten home. I lied. Turns out I'm not a terrible liar under duress, and told him I was already in bed. Since I had zero intention of ever seeing him again, I thought that was the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. Over the next few days, he kept texting non-stop. I mostly ignored him and sent curt replies. I planned to let him down gently at the end of the week, once work calmed down. For context, my job on Capitol Hill required strict security screenings, metal detectors, x-rays, even email screenings. So the day after our date, I got a call from the off-site Capitol Hill package center. They told me they were processing a package addressed to me that would arrive in 2 days. I just thought, weird. I'm not expecting anything. But I shrugged it off, assuming it was just part of the job. That Friday, a receptionist walked up to my cubicle with the most obnoxiously over-the-top bouquet of roses I'd ever seen, and a card. Right away, I knew who sent them. What truly terrified me, though, was that I had never told Tinder Guy where I worked, or even which congressman I worked for. He had no way of knowing my office address or my last name. I'd given him zero identifying details. No last name, no state, nothing. My social media accounts were locked down, and even my LinkedIn didn't list the office nor member name. There are 535 congressional officers on Capitol Hill and roughly 15,000 staffers. How the hell did he find me? To this day, I have no idea how he managed it. If I wasn't creeped out before, I was now in full-fledged panic mode, especially after reading the note. Here's some lowlights. He called me a great kisser. He described what he wanted to do to me. He talked about introducing me to his family. He wrote, "I can't wait to see you again." Yeah, in your dreams, bud. One silver lining. That experience finally gave me the courage to end things directly. Before then, I had a bad habit of engaging with people I wasn't interested in, just to avoid hurting their feelings. After Tinder Guy, I learned that being polite can be dangerous, and that honestly, even uncomfortable honesty, is far kinder and safer in the long run. It also taught me to embrace the "fuck politeness" mantra. I'm in a serious long-term relationship now, but even outside of dating, I no longer ignore my gut. If someone makes me uncomfortable the way Tinder Guy did, I listen to that instinct. I block, cut ties, or if needed, explain why I'm cutting ties and then disappear for good. Anyway, apologies for the length. I've never shared this story with anyone outside my old roommates, but it's been incredibly cathartic to finally get it all out. So, to the creepy Tinder Guy, we will definitely not be meeting again. Stay safe out there, everyone. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these Let's Not Meet stories. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the rest of the members of BackToAshes. Thank you all so much for your continued dedication. It is highly appreciated. As I always like to say, without you, I don't have a voice and this channel wouldn't exist, and I'd be sitting here just talking to my lonely old self. So thank you so much for your dedication and for your love of the channel. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.